What's up, you guys? Sean Ross Sapp, Fightful.com, here with a name you know. You can catch him on Ring of Honor, not just in the ring, but in the commentary booth. We got one of the best color commentators out there right now, Caprice Coleman. How you doing?
Oh man, I'm happy to be here. I'm glad you brought me on. I'm glad to be able to speak on your show, man. I'm doing great.
Oh man, it's great to have you here. I've enjoyed your work for a very long time, from the in-ring stuff to CNC to the Pulpit, which is something that I miss a whole lot. I really want to talk about that. Those were some of the most entertaining talk show segments that I had ever seen, especially the one with Jay Lethal. Like that one.
I love it.
Oh, that one made me want to jump through the screen. Like I was like you were so good at just getting under his skin there. What do you remember about how those came together? Because, like I said, they were different than a lot of the traditional talk shows we see in wrestling.
Yeah. The idea was I wanted to. It was a time in Ring of Honor where I said there are a lot of people here that people are looking at them as just wrestlers, And I said if we had a talk show to where I could bring out the character of some of these people, then maybe fans can kind of gravitate more to their character than just their wrestling ability, or you just have a roster full of wrestlers that kind of blend into each other. And so I really wanted to pull out characters, what made them tick, what made them different than other people, and all. And I was a huge fan of Piper's Pit.
Yeah.
And so I've probably watched all those episodes like 2 or 3 times. And just kind of put my own spin on things and just let the ideas flow as they came.
Oh man, those were so good. And they would range. It'd be like you doing therapy with the guy we now know as Damian Priest, or like you getting under Kenny King's skin in order to get a title shot from him, or like the Jay Lethal one to me was the best because you were like, hey, I just printed off your Wikipedia page and I'm gonna read directly from that. And you would go through and you're like, Sting, Flair, who cares about that? You dated
Right.
AJ Lee. Like, it was such a unique, different way, as opposed to just set it up in the ring, we'll do it there. So I assume you guys were like on like a production thing and you're in front of a green screen, right?
Right. Kind of like our own setup. And that's kind of the only thing that messed up the Pulpit was that we had a production day before TV tapings and all. And then things changed up and we lost the production day due to travel. And it became our travel day. So we lost the production day. So some of the things we were able to do on production day, we weren't able to do anymore. So that was done like in a separate place the day before the show type thing.
So would you film like a ton of those like back to back or in one day because of that production day?
It depends. Sometimes you do 2 or 3 of them. Sometimes we do one. It depends on what we had going on.
And I mentioned CNC. I mean, to me, that was one of my favorite eras of tag team wrestling, period, was the ROH tag team division in the early 2010s. To me, it's right up there with any of them because at any given time, you'd have the Briscoes, you'd have the world's greatest tag team, you'd have Red Dragon, you'd have CNC. Yeah. There were so many different styles, A&X as well.
Yeah.
Like when
we had Future Shock was Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly.
Young Bucks were popping up there.
The Young Bucks. We had Eddie Edwards and David Richards. We had it was the All Night Express. We had it was a stacked tag team division.
That's what made me take a look at tag team wrestling again and be like, oh, this is what I love. This is what I loved in the early 2000s, the early 90s. Like, did you all know that was something special, like that division? Because it's hard to intentionally even craft one that loaded with talent.
No, I guess you have to look at from my view. I had just got a job.
Yeah.
And so in my eyes, we were kind of thrown into the deep end, a new tag team on the scene against these great people. And so watching TV, I knew it was the greatest tag team division going on right now. And my thing was, man, how do we even fit in this ball game,
Yeah.
And so it was outside looking in. I guess you're always the one that's like, man, everybody's great. type thing. You look at yourself, you're like, well, how great are we? But people put us right along with that tandem of all the tag teams that were great at that time. And it's an honor to be a part of that.
I mean, Scum was there, and we didn't even mention like Chris Hero and Cesaro at the time. Like, it was, and looking back, it aged
Kings
even better.
Of wrestling, right?
Like, even like then you knew it was good, but looking like 8-9 years later, it's aged even better, and it's not always the case when that happens. But man, that division really added a lot of excitement for me. You've been in the ring a lot more lately than you were the last couple of years. Why was there I don't want to say the big break, because you were still wrestling here and there. Like, you wrestled Bully Ray. I know you did some MCW Ring of Honor stuff as well, but you had scaled back your in-ring for quite a while.
Yeah, they signed me to an exclusive contract, Ring of Honor, and the exclusive contract at the time was Fightful Wrestling. And then I guess a year in, I was doing commentary a lot, and commentary got moved around. What's his name? Colt Cabana went on, and so I was offered the lead color position, and I took it. And I was under an exclusive contract, so that kind of kept me from wrestling anywhere else, and I was just doing commentary. And so I didn't wrestle for a while, and I couldn't wrestle anywhere else. And then we were in a meeting one time, and I was part of creative, and it was like, oh, Caprice, we could put you in this match here. And I was like, oh, that'd be great. But just know it's been 4 years since I've been inside the ring, because you made me exclusive.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, oh, okay. And so after that, they say, I can kind of get back on the indies to kind of, keep the dust off the cake, and so I jumped back in, head first, man. I love it. And I've always loved it. And then they kept me on commentary, and I still love commentary with a passion. I thank God for that transition that a lot of people don't even get, and so to have that transition in place is phenomenal. But, I always loved the ring as well. And so to be able to do both, I feel to be that versatile and to be able to do both at a high level, it's a gift.
As we film this, you're facing off with Beer City Bruiser, a guy who I've talked to several times. Such a unique character and person and in-ring performer. So, I mean, Ring of Honor, even as things stand, provide you an opportunity to wrestle a variety of different people. What's it been like for you getting back in the ring specifically for them?
It's kind of like, I look at my position now, and some people say, oh, you're just a commentator now. And I was like, well, I never retired. There's no retiring from pro wrestling, So I just moved. I transitioned to a place because I was offered a job. And my thing is, I'm like, well, you look at me and you say, well, I'm just a commentator, but I feel that I'm a king sitting on a throne, literally paid to scout my competition. Yeah. And so with me calling these matches and with me looking at all the competition there, not only am I able to accentuate them in a way that makes them important and the reason why they're there, but I'm also able to dissect them while doing that. And so I think that gives me an advantage from outside in, because I already know who I'm facing. I know their movesets. I know what they're capable of. I know their strengths, and I know their weaknesses as well.
So I know during the pandemic, obviously everybody's booking slowed down, but it didn't seem like you wrestled a ton during them. Was that a concentrated thing, or was it just like, was that like for personal safety, or were you just like, maybe I should just hold off for a little while?
I was never in a rush. Wrestling to me was when I came back was really to stay in ring shape. Mm-hmm. But when the pandemic happened, to me, COVID was real. I had family members that died. I had friends that died. I had a lot of friends that died. I know over 30 people personally that had COVID, and I know 7 to 8 people that died from it. So it was something very real for me, and I took it serious. So I was in no rush to be in front of a crowd just to, for an ego, when I had a training school that I train at every Wednesday, that I can do matches there. And my students, we, wore masks, and we made sure we were vaccinated, and whatever your thing was to make you feel comfortable during the pandemic. My thing was getting vaccinated and wearing a mask, and some people's were different things. But my thing is whatever makes you comfortable during this, understanding how real it is, then let's do it. And so I wasn't active in crowds or whatever. And even Ring of Honor kind of helped me with that, seeing how serious they were taking the pandemic. And so I'm like, if this, billion-dollar company is being that serious with it, why can't I be more serious with it?
As I look back through your history, there's a specific promotion I've always been so intrigued by, and it's I don't know if it's pronounced Qatar or Qatar. I've heard it pronounced both ways, but you've done like several spots over there, like 3 or 4, and I've always heard that they treat people really well when they bring you in and all that stuff. Please explain to me how that experience has been and how it came about.
Well, I lived in Kuwait for 3 years, from 2006 to 2009. I was a military contractor, worked on the military base there, worked in the ministry there. And while I was there, I was trying to get pro wrestling started in Kuwait. And I wasn't the first one, and WWE had been there in the early 90s. And something Ben Bader did with one of the hosts there, he like slapped the host or did something, and they literally banned pro wrestling in Kuwait.
He was detained there for a while.
Yeah. And so I was one trying to lift the ban of pro wrestling in Kuwait by myself, just an American citizen. I didn't have a lot of pull.
Yeah.
However, the time that I got there, somebody else was trying to do the same thing that had way more pull than I did. And so they connected us together. And the guy, it's funny because at the time, Kuwaiti TV and American TV was like 6 months behind each other. So 6 months prior to me being in Kuwait, I was doing a lot of stuff with WWE. And so when I came to Kuwait, 6 months later, my stuff is showing that I did on WWE. And so I'm going places and they're like, hey, we know you, WWE, or whatever. It's extra stuff that I did. And so the guy immediately knew who I was. And he just started booking me on the shows that they did in Kuwait. And it was like a tour that they would bring in, older WWE guys and some other guys from different countries and all. And I was just part of that show. And the response I got from those shows and my work rate, he said, hey, anytime we have a show, you'll be part of it. And they morphed off into the, Qatar Pro Wrestling thing. And I've been a part of it ever since. And so even with me going home, because my first tour there, I said, well, this is probably going to be my last tour because, in a few months, I'm going back to America. Yeah. And they was like, well, it doesn't matter. So if we do a show, you'll be a part of it. And awesome. They've continued to bring me back since then.
That's awesome. And you mentioned your WWE stuff. I remember that wasn't where I first saw you, but I did see you. And I saw you so often that I assumed you were just a full-time part of the roster because they were in the Carolinas so much between 05 and 06 that I remember you'd be on Heat, you'd be on Velocity, and it'd be like every 2 or 3 months. So I was like, oh, this guy's got to be signed because I remember specifically a match with Noble, one with Masters. You did a lot of those. Is there anything specifically you remember about going in and doing those matches? Any feedback, any memorable moments of those?
All of them were memorable. And the thing about that was like at that time, I just always felt like I was on the edge of getting signed, like I was going to get a contract and they treated me so. They were very nice to me. I didn't have any bad run-ins with anybody or whatever. And I would talk to them and different people would say, hey, something might happen. I'm going to talk to so-and-so. And I would just come there and just do my best, and it got to a point to where people were requesting to work with me and all. And so they said, that's a good thing. And then I guess the thing that would always happen is the person that was interested in hiring me would get fired. And so I would come in and there would be a new person in charge and it would be like starting over, like each time. And so that's just kind of what happened there. But every time I was there, I enjoyed myself. And it was kind of like, I was very hopeful, that something would happen. But it just didn't. And I mean, it is what it is. That's a huge business, and people wish the cards played out different, but my life is what it is,
So, I mean, obviously they had an incredible amount of confidence in you to repeatedly put you in
Yeah,
these positions.
yeah,
These are, and that had to feel good at least.
yeah. It was really good because I pretty much knew for sure anytime WWE was in Virginia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, any of the surrounding areas that I was gonna get a phone call, and that's a great feeling.
And a couple of the people you ended up wrestling, Simon Dean, who is Nova, he would end up working in talent relations. Jamie
Right,
Noble has been one of
right.
their longtime producers. So I mean, people that had wrestled you knew that you were good, and eventually were in positions of influence. That couldn't have hurt either.
Right, and that's like what I was saying. That they would help me
Yeah.
until they got to I guess a certain point, and then something would happen with them, and then they would get switched around, and this would get switched around, and so I don't know. It's the nature of the beast, People get moved around, and you're kind of starting all over again each time. Um, but hey, it is what it is.
Now, I'll never forget the first time I saw you because I used to watch every bit of wrestling I could get my hands on, and it was a TNA explosion match. And it was you and Roddy Strong against CM Punk and Julio De Niro.
Yeah.
I'm made of questions about this because that era is so fascinating to me. Punk in TNA is fascinating to me. You and Roddy there that early is fascinating to me because like I think a lot of people don't even realize that you and Roderick Strong were wrestling back then in a lot of ways. Please explain to me how that came about and the match itself.
I started wrestling in '97. And I started in North Carolina. I was trained by Matt and Jeff, and they had by that time got signed with WWE, and I was with a company mostly in Georgia called NWA Wildside.
Yes.
NWA Wildside, TNA came around. It was total nonstop action. They were kind of brand new on the scene. It was something that Jeff Jarrett had in mind, and somebody else, and it was trying to find a way to make the NWA big again type thing. And so at the time, nobody really knew what was going to happen. It was just a new thing on the scene. And so we're in Tennessee, and I got booked for them, and it was a tag team match, and it was actually the first time I met Roderick Strong. Was there in that building, and they said we would be tagging. It was like, oh, okay, cool. And I remember the conversation I had with Roddy. He like introduced himself to me, and I said, well, what do you do? He said, oh, I'm the Messiah of the backbreaker. I have all these backbreakers. I was like, oh, cool, whatever.
Yeah.
And I said, he asked me what I do, and I told him, I said, I'm real innovative. He said, okay, energetic. He said, well, whatever you do, I'll match it. I said, all right, cool. And so that was just like, okay, cool. And so we knew who we were going to wrestle, but they were doing multiple TV tapings on the same day.
Yeah.
And so CM Punk and Julio had like two huge matches and like one huge match that day, like a main event for the show, whatever, that they were like trying to get ready for. And it was like taking a really long time to get ready for. And then 10, 15 minutes before our match, it's like, all right, guys, here we go. So it was kind of like really fast, like, all right, guys, y'all up, type thing. And then we had our match, and so that's how that came about. And it's kind of a lost gem because every once in a while I get to pull it up and see it and look at it now. And I look at who's who now. Yeah. And to be a part of it, I thought it was really cool.
And it's funny because, like, as a teenager, as I'm watching that, I assume Caprice Coleman and Roderick Strong are a regular tag team, not realizing you all just met each other. And then, like, 12, 13 years later, I'm seeing you face, like, the Decade on TV or Roderick Strong on TV. Like, I see these matches promoted for, like, these toured shows, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool to see. So it's wild to see how things go, much like we talked about the tag team division from the early 2010s, where everybody is now. It's pretty wild.
If you look at pro wrestling now, if you just think of Ring of Honor and you look at who's who in pro wrestling on all the big shows, they came from Ring of Honor.
Mm-hmm.
And it just is what it is. And people are like, oh, you ever think about going to the big leagues? To me, Ring of Honor has always been the big leagues. Ring of Honor has been the foundation of wrestling, to where people go and if they come from Ring of Honor and go to TV, 9 times out of 10, they go straight to TV.
Yeah.
There's no holding stage for them, and that's a testament in itself.
Well, as we film this now, there are definitely some question marks around Ring of Honor. I mean, some elements are still operating. PR set up this interview, so I mean, like, that's still running smoothly. You all are still doing interviews. You're still doing the tapings. I did hear very emotional tapings, obviously, as you head into Final Battle. What's sort of your reaction, or maybe it's hard to put into words, I'm sure, like what we've learned and like what the future may or may not hold for Ring of Honor.
It's real, man. It's life. I look at Ring of Honor and I love them. Ring of Honor has never lied to me. They've never made me feel any kind of way. They've never led me astray on anything they've told me. And during the pandemic, we didn't know what was going to happen. And we had our, weekly Zoom call that we would get, and they assured us that they were going to take care of everybody through a pandemic, not to worry about anything.
Heard they treated people exceptionally well during the pandemic.
Yeah, they held on to they honored our contracts and everything. And so for like 6 months, we didn't do anything, and we still got, paid, and we still got taken care of. And we did PR stuff like I'm doing with you, interviews and different stuff like that. And then when they started back wrestling, we were part of the bubble. We couldn't be roommates anymore. And we had all these tests to do. We had to be flown in for this day, the test day. We would take a COVID test before we got there to make sure we didn't have COVID. We would take a COVID test when we landed, and we would take a COVID test before we left. Like, it had to be expensive,
yes.
And so all this was happening. And I thought the peer division was starting up, which was a great thing. And we just felt things were looking good. But, if you look at it, you're like, man, how's all this being paid for?
Yeah.
You just don't know. But like, you think about Sinclair, you think, oh, they're $1 billion corporation. They'll be just fine. And so you just never saw it happen. And I'm not going to sit here and lie and act like, oh, whatever. It hit a lot of people hard. It's uncertainty, but I don't blame Ring of Honor. I feel like if they had to do it all over again, they might have done something different, or they might have done the exact same thing. But what they have always been is straight up and honest. So when they told us before it hit, the airways and all, and people think like, oh, that's the rest in peace Ring of Honor. But they just said that they're going on hiatus for a season, and they're starting back up in April. And we don't know what that startup means, what version of Ring of Honor it'll be. I'm hopeful that it'll be a better version of Ring of Honor, rediscovered, redesigned, hopefully with new listings or bigger channel or whatever, because Sinclair has bought some big networks.
Yeah.
And so there's some great opportunity there. But we don't know. And that the uncertainty is what everybody is kind of taken back about, but you can really see who your real fans are during this time. And it's amazing to me, the fans that have stuck with us this long and continue to stick with us. And then you see those little ones that are like, oh, it's over, it's that, and it's this. And you want to ask them, like, did you ever really watch the product at all? Were you ever really into it? Or are you just somebody that heard some news and just wants to spread bad news, because Ring of Honor has been a company that for a long time has just really been prestige on their word and prestige on what they deliver. And so to me, whatever happens is going to happen, and it's going to be their best effort. And so all I can continue to do during this time is do my best effort at whatever I do.
And I know that Joe Koff had said, yeah, maybe he would have done things a little bit differently with now a lot of the people that had to do with All In and All Elite Wrestling, because ROH helped birth that, obviously.
Yeah.
But, I mean, when I look back at the last 2 years, it took him about a year, it seems, to really realize, let's make some big changes. And I always heard about that meeting that they flew everybody in for, and they took a ton of input from the wrestlers, and they implemented it. Right after that, they were switching up the booking, and nobody could have possibly expected the stuff with Marty to happen the way that it was. But that was a step in them saying, we need to change. Then during the pandemic, they took care of all the wrestlers, paid people who were on paid per appearance stuff that they didn't even have to pay. Then They changed their production in the middle of the pandemic and made it slicker and smoother. And
Yeah.
then, I haven't even dropped this story yet, but I'm about to, like right before this interview goes out. They had a meeting with GCW in the weeks prior where they're like, "Hey, let's exchange some talent. This is hot. Let's make our show hotter." So you would constantly see them going, "Let's change this. Let's change this. Let's make this better." So I mean, it is a bit of a gut punch as like a viewer, as a fan, because I saw their efforts to make things better, and not at the expense of your health, because EC3 was planned for a huge match with Jay Briscoe. He got COVID. They said stay home. Don't bother.
And that's my thing with Ring of Honor. Even when you talk about the Marty thing, they've always stuck to their guns and they've always did what they felt was right, and they made sure that everybody knew that, you know, they weren't what's the word I'm working? They weren't, you know, untouchable, I guess is the only thing. You know, it doesn't matter who you were. These are the rules, and if you don't apply to the rules, then you're out. You know, and it didn't matter who you were or what you were, what position you held. You know, they had their rules, and there were even like people that had COVID that, you know, during TV tapings, that not even the people that had COVID, but if you were around somebody that had COVID, and I'm talking about title holders, like they would send them home just to keep everybody else safe. They were very serious about it.
Caprice Coleman, I want to thank you so much. You've given me so much of your time, and I really appreciate it. Please tell the people where they can find you, where they can follow you, all that good stuff.
Caprice Coleman on Twitter, Caprice Coleman on Instagram. I have a Caprice Coleman fan page on Facebook. I'm on TikTok, kinda, you know. I'm still kind of learning. I'm not gonna say I have a grasp on TikTok yet, but like the other platforms are pretty easy to get in contact with me.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you being candid. I know it's a wild time for you and all that stuff, but guys, check him out. Caprice Coleman, thank you so much.
Thank you, man. I appreciate the interview, and I will say, out of all the interviews I've done, you have had the most information prepared than anybody else. So you've done a great job.
Well, this is my first time getting to interview you. You're somebody who I've watched for 15, 16 years, but I've never had the chance to interview you. So I'm like, when they mentioned your name, I was like, oh my God, I've got 10 years worth of stuff. And there's stuff I didn't even ask. Like, I want to save some for another time as well. But always a big fan of the Pulpit, especially like that Jay Lethal segment is one of my favorite in ROH history. So I was very happy to talk about that as well. But thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, man.
Support Caprice Coleman. Until next time, we're out.